Cool. Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining from. Thank you for your time. This is the first webinar in the series around the future of enterprise B2B sales. My name is Anup. I'm the founder of Skwill. Skwill is a sales performance coaching company. Our mission is to deliver on-demand, actionable, personalized, and business contextual coaching at scale. I'm a salesperson for the last 3 decades. My primary focus has been around technology services, product sales, and building high-performance sales teams. We've got a packed session coming up. I'll try and finish this within 45 minutes and have about 15 minutes for Q&A. What we plan to cover today is to take a look at enterprise sales as it is today, talk a little bit about how we look at the future and the concept around how technology and humans can work together, especially sellers in this case, and the 7 key shifts that are required by organizations to unlock potential of the sales teams. And finally, we'll wrap it up by looking at what it means for CEOs, founders, and leaders in terms of the future of enterprise sales. Why does this matter? Clearly, there's an economic opportunity. The global market for technology services, products, and SaaS is about $2 trillion, and it's growing at about 13.5%. So clearly, there's an economic opportunity that makes it attractive. End of the day, we are a coaching company. While that's only half the picture, the other half is really about people like us. I'm glad that I'm in a company of peers who sell and who build businesses. It's also an opportunity for us to continue to build a fulfilling career and pursue our goals. So those were the 2 main drivers for us to look at this particular topic and see how we can contribute to a better environment when it comes to selling in the future. Having said that, when we look at the state of sales today, it can feel a bit broken, and there's also a cost attached to that brokenness. By all yardsticks, sales performance is falling in organizations. Last year, just about 1/4 of sellers met quota. The average tenure of salespeople has also been dropping post-COVID, so it's about 18 months now. Buyers have become much more savvier. They have access to the same tools that sellers do. And it's interesting to see that sellers report just about 15% of the sellers that they talk to act like trusted advisors. All of this obviously adding a lot of stress to salespeople. The last year's mental health report for salespeople in B2B globally was about 70% of sellers experiencing a stressful event every 24 hours at work. Finally, to compound all of this, AI is obviously added much more confusion to the mix. Having said that, AI is also creating a big divide between companies that have begun to adopt technology much more aggressively compared to the laggards that aren't really using tech. If we put all of this together, we get the sense that the sales system is broken and outdated. It's easy to sort of say that it's broken and outdated, but we also wanted to contribute to the solution. As a team, we looked at a singular question. If all of this is the state of being today and it's continually getting worse, what might the future of enterprise sales look like? And to be able to answer that fundamental question, we had to go back to basics. And this is also part of our research methodology for this white paper. We went back and asked and looked at what does a seller actually do in a week? Where is his or her time spent? What do they do? And how do they do what they do? To be able to answer this question, we did 4 different techniques. One, there was a lot of primary and secondary research that we accessed. We also had about 100 odd interviews that we have had with sales leaders through our own business and discovery meetings. We looked at data from our own app, both in terms of coaching minutes and the insights that we generate around meetings and behavior. And finally, we also looked at the product reviews on G2 for a variety of sales apps that allow sellers to do their jobs effectively. And the conclusion was the following. Sellers do somewhere between 40 to 60 unique tasks a week. 40 for a small firm, 60 for a large firm. Sellers use 10 plus tools every week in the pursuit of completing those 60 tasks. And as a consequence of all of this, they spend less than 1/3 of their time actually talking or meeting or interacting with customers. And that really explains why we have this trust deficit and also explains why the state of sales is the way it is. We need salespeople to be out in front of customers much more than 1/3 of their week. We didn't leave it at that. We then took each of the tasks that the sellers do, broke it down into subtasks, and we took an inventory close to about 120 different micro tasks that a seller does, estimated how much time they actually spend on it today. That then gave us a very good view around how we could start to group tasks and how we can use technology much more effectively to enable sellers to be more productive, effective, and efficient in the tasks that they do. So we came up with 4 categories of tasks. Tasks that are easy for sellers. So these are things that a seller will look at and say, I can get this done really quickly. It's very natural, it's fast, and an experienced rep can do it very, very quickly. Then there are tasks that are hard for sellers. There could be around data gathering, it could be around analysis. It essentially slows down the seller or it just drains energy from the seller. So those were 2 tasks primarily from a seller's perspective. We also applied the same yardstick for AI. What tasks seem easy for AI? Are there tasks that can be repeated with a high level of accuracy every single time? So there are easy for AI tasks. And then we looked at tasks that are difficult for AI when it comes to subjective assessments, when it comes to understanding context and behavior. Once we had these 4 categories that could label tasks with, we eventually ended up developing what we call the human agency framework. We use the word human primarily because it's not necessarily limited to sellers. It could be used by any organization that's looking to understand how AI can help the organization and the individual in question. The way we've put this together is in a quadrant format. So on the left, you would find 2 rows, tasks that are easy for AI, tasks that are hard for AI, and 2 columns representing tasks that are easy for humans and tasks that are hard for humans. Quadrant number 1 essentially is an intersection of tasks which are easy for AI and easy for humans. So things like logging meetings, drafting follow-ups, summarizing calls, all of that. Those tasks must be automated for capacity. It takes away the grunt work. It makes it, and considering the fact that they're highly accurate, AIs can be highly accurate, they're easy candidates for automation really quickly. If you move towards the right, quadrant number 2, these are tasks that are fairly easy for AI, but slightly harder for humans. Think about account research. Think about identifying buying signals by poring through websites and research reports, writing pre-call briefs before a discovery meeting or a negotiation meeting. We believe that these tasks can be assisted by AI. So AI takes a stab at doing what they need to do. Seller looks at it and then makes a final judgment call. So that's quadrant number 2. Quadrant number 3, which is at the bottom left, are tasks which are very easy for humans, but really tough for AI. Things like relationship building, small talk, building one-on-one relationships. Those tasks, we let the seller lead, but provide AI to provide background information. So essentially elevate the ability of the seller to be more effective in those tasks. And finally, quadrant number 4, which is really where tasks are really hard for AI. It's also hard for human beings. In this case, sellers. We recommend that sellers lead because that's where individual sellers and their behavior can create impact with their customers and the job that they do. Things like managing group dynamics, handling really objections across a range of buyers in a particular deal, or getting everybody to align and buy and make decisions together. We believe that this framework is simple enough for folks to do on their own, but powerful enough to sort of put together a roadmap on how organizations can transition from where they are to start embedding technology and AI much more assertively in the pursuit of enabling sellers' life. As I said previously, I think fundamentally, if you had to think about what all of this does, it essentially provides 3 gains for organizations. 1, there is a direct improvement in productivity, which is purely accomplished by automating a lot of the repetitive tasks with high degree of accuracy. The second gain to be had is about efficiency. So getting things right the very first time, and how long does it take to get it right? So all of the things around things which are, easy for AI, but slightly harder for humans. So assisting sellers, in call briefs and account research, all of those things improve the efficiency of obviously the individual and also the organization. The final quadrant, really, the bottom right, which is really the effectiveness place where the impact can be felt. So all of this together, in our estimate, allows sellers to save probably about 25 hours a week per seller, improve productivity by about 47%. And like I said earlier, there's a net benefit in terms of quota achievement about 2 times by implementing technology in a way that's seamless for sellers. That's all great in terms of the state of being, how technology can help, in this case AI, and a way to sort of look at how to deploy tech to make that future possible. But those frameworks are only possible if organizations can look at 7 key shifts that they need to implement. And those 7 shifts cut across 3 broad categories. One, there are a bunch of changes around the skills and behavior of their sales team. The second is primarily around the systems and the way coaching is delivered within those organizations. And finally, the last category is something more foundational in terms of how trust is built within that organization. So we identified 7 shifts that are slowly moving the needle in the direction of creating a better environment for sales in the future. The next couple of slides, we'll unpack each of those 7 shifts and what it sort of means for all of us on this particular call. The first shift is really around skills and behavior. It's changing the narrative of training from repetition to adaptability. The traditional way of doing the same thing over and over again in favor of being more responsive and being more adaptable. So that's really the first shift that we are seeing. Second is the role of behavioral science in sales, paying attention to the behavior of the buyer, behavior of your teams, and how to adjust real time based on that changes in behavior. The third is ditching the creation part every single time to more in favor of curation, making data available for the seller to sort of then build the context and curate content as opposed to creating it from scratch. All of these 3 require a different set of skills and behavior for the salespeople. The fourth shift that we notice is coaching has to be real time. It cannot be after the fact. The fifth shift is around seller segmentation. Today, most sellers sell everything that's thrown at them and sell to every single buyer. We find that when you specialize and play to your strength as a seller, so there's a particular type of deal that you're really good at, a particular type of buyer that you're really good at managing, that really improves sales performance. Sixth shift is essentially integrating AI into your work life. As opposed to a discrete task and a discrete tool, how do you curate the customer journey, in this case, the seller journey, and how do you orchestrate a seamless, frictionless interface between technology and AI to deliver outcomes? And finally, the last shift that we see is around trust. When buyers have access to the same tools, when your competition has access to the same tools and the same information, what sets you apart is actually your credibility and trust. And how does organizations help build that credibility, which you can then piggyback on as you deliver powerful engagement back to your customers? So we see these 7 shifts, which are really pushing the boundaries of what is possible. And all of this that I'm talking about are not too far in the future. They're already being done. When we look at high-performing organizations, it's already a reality for a lot of them. What we'll do over the next couple of slides is unpack each of them a little more in detail and help you think through what it might mean for you in your roles. The first shift we talked about was from moving away from a repeatable sales motion to a more adaptive sales motion. And I'm sure most of you on this call can relate to this. When we started our jobs as salespeople, we are essentially given a rule book. step one, step two, step three. This is a sales process. Follow. What is it that we need to talk? So we essentially had to stick to a script, and we were essentially measured on how well we were able to stick to that script. That's become passé. It doesn't really matter because the buying cycles have become more fluid. The number of buyers in a deal have also become much more than what it was maybe a few years ago. So the focus now is not to sort of stick to a script, it's sort of to adapt in the moment. And based on cues and signals that you receive as you interact with your customers. And AI can help decipher those signals at scale. So it doesn't matter whether it's a LinkedIn post, whether it's an email, whether it is a market research or an annual report, being able to synthesize all of that and make changes to your sales motion on the fly. What that means for organizations essentially is you got to stop measuring compliance and start measuring how adaptable the salespeople are. The test for responsiveness, not for repetition. The second shift is around using behavioral science. Again, let's just go back to how it's being done today. Right? We essentially are given a call script. If you're doing a cold call, we have a script. It's usually standard. You know the role that you're going to hit. You essentially start, open, make the pitch, you ask for a close to action. You are essentially following a methodology and applying the same method to multiple buyers, irrespective of whether the buyer is and how they actually perceive or behave. I think there's a shift in that. You should be able to now personalize your engagement, both based on buyer personality and their behavior in the deal and off the deal or before the deal. You must be able to change your questions and your interaction based on that particular behavior. Again, AI has a role to play. It can really surface behavioral patterns, whether it's across roles, whether it's across an organization or through an interaction that equips the sellers to now pay attention to the nuance. And what does that actually mean for organizations? One, you've got to coach live behavior, not just call scores. You've got to track how a seller responds, not just what they say. In a sense, you're trying to coach the seller to be more present in front of the buyer and not thinking about how to repeat a particular playbook. And I think that fundamentally makes credibility of the seller to the fore. The third shift that we're seeing is the role of the AI enhanced seller in terms of creating content vis-a-vis curating content. When I started working in sales, whenever there was a proposal, the easiest thing to do was to look at an old proposal, copy paste the content, make some changes, and then ship it out. And I am surprised to see that that's still the norm. That is definitely dead. So the focus is not so much on creating new content. It's really about curating new content and creating the context around that content. Why should somebody pay attention to this particular piece of information that I'm sending you? So creating the context and then creating insights that are really personalized and curated for that particular buyer in that role, in that organization. And that's really the shift from the content creation world to the more curation world. What does that mean for an organization? It means instead of sort of asking who created it, we need to start thinking who chose this piece of information that's really powerful. Organizations must invest in creating data stores and repositories where sellers can come and decide how to and what to bring to create a curated experience. Right now, if I look at the sellers that we talk to, they use a variety of tools, information is scattered, it's exceptionally manual and obviously unsecure to a large extent. The moral of the story, coach your teams to curate, not to spend inordinate amount of time creating content which is already probably stale by the time it hits the customer. The fourth shift is really coaching in the flow of work and conversation. Even today, salespeople are swamped with weekly reviews, quarterly business reviews, a whole ton of things which are all after the fact. Conversations typically go, how did that deal go? Why did you lose the deal? So on and so forth. And the seller comes up with some way of explaining what happened in that week or in that sale and why they lost it or why they won it. But all of that information is useless because you've already lost the deal. The shift here is to be more proactive and be able to deliver coaching on demand. So understand when things are moving and get coached when things are moving so that you can actually have a way to salvage it or double down on it. It also is about figuring out when to take a pause, when to push in, when to lean in. AI again can help here by understanding language patterns, facial expressions, understand context a lot better around what is actually the signal that the buyer is, sending by emailing you, not emailing you, and a whole range of other things. So being able to pull coaching forward real time before the fact, I think is a fundamental game shift. This wasn't available without significant investment, but I think today where we are, it's eminently possible. And I find that high-performing organizations, you will find sellers having at least 2 to 3 interactions of coaching every week. Compare that to laggards in terms of coaching, where it's probably once every 6 months, and in some cases, just once a year. So what do organizations need to fix? I think the number one thing that they can possibly do is to move coaching from a calendar to coaching in the moment. Use AI as a way to reflect, as a mirror. So it's a safe space. You can do inordinate amount of role plays, scenario modeling, try things out in the privacy of your own room, in your own device. And find a way to incorporate feedback while it is happening. That brings more power back to the seller, allows the seller to be in control as opposed to passively go with the flow. The fifth shift that we're seeing is essentially segmentation of sellers, not just buyers. All organizations have an ICP, right? We spend inordinate amounts of time trying to figure out whom do we sell to, who's our ideal customer, and the sales motion attached to that particular customer. High-performing organizations spend more time thinking about how to match the right seller to the right buyer and the right deal type. The reason is this: not all sellers can behave in all ways that are required for a particular seller or a particular deal. Every seller has got a strength. Identifying that strength and matching that to the deal and the buyer is fundamentally critical to unlock the seller's performance. At scale, it moves the needle of organizational sales performance significantly up. AI again can help detect what the seller strengths are, what your deal needs are, and what your buyer characteristics are, and can dynamically assign what seller needs to front end a particular deal, and when do you need to bring somebody else in to make the closing done. So the traditional way of throwing all services to a single seller and hoping that they orchestrate the entire sales process start to end is becoming more and more ineffective, because the organizations that have access to seller matching are able to better meet buyer needs real time. So it's not necessarily a skill gap in the sense that I can't sell this or I can't sell that. It's essentially trying to match what you're really good at with what you really need to do. What that then allows you to do is you create a team of hyper specialists that all play to the strengths, not a team of clones where everybody is exactly the same as everybody else, good or bad. The sixth shift that we see is really around trust. We talked about this briefly. Buyers are exceptionally savvy. They have access to the same tools. They do the same research that you do. They even look up sellers to understand what their background is. Not to mention the fact that every single deal has probably 4 or 5 different competitors vying for the same business. So in this crowd, how does the organization and how does the seller stand apart? The traditional thinking has been to create like this perfect pitch with all of the information in all of the slides that you can possibly present. You have sort of standard objection handling scripts, and you focus on tracking activity, right? Update your CRM, put XYZ information, so on and so forth. But if you look at what high-performing sellers and organizations do, they do 3 things very differently compared to what the traditional organizations do. One, they spend a lot more time listening than talking, and their follow-up is almost instantaneous. They're able to navigate pressure very effectively, and they use AI as a way to augment the seller, build trust, and also navigate pressure. So the focus here for an organization has to move from tracking metrics to tracking for consistency. From the time you get an initial meeting, how long does it take you to do a follow-up? If you get an email back from your prospect or your customer, how long in hours does it take for you to get back? The shorter, the better. So all of this essentially, from a buyer's perspective, provides responsiveness and agility, and also increasingly builds credibility over time. And that then builds trust. And that then sets you apart from rest of your competition by a long yard. So the takeaway really is that don't try and optimize to get the perfect pitch. Try and optimize for believing, or rather building belief with the buyer. The last shift we notice is essentially the orchestration of human and AI teams. I'm pretty sure all of you will agree again that if you look at your sales tech stack, you have a range of tools, some of them integrated, most of them disparate. You're switching context between LinkedIn and Navigator and CRM and all of the other things that you need to do. That drains people, it slows down momentum. You've got to fundamentally rethink the way organizations deploy tool set to enable sellers. Today, most tools are deployed org down. It's about management reporting. It's not about seller effectiveness. I think that needs a fundamental rethink. How do we help the seller do their jobs effectively and efficiently? So creating a workflow or a seller journey from start to end for each of their jobs, and then figuring out using the Skwill, human agency framework, where can AI complement, where can AI take the lead, but make that together in a seamless start to end, workflow that blends the traditional thinking between systems and tools. So moral of the story is try to think of AI as a teammate that can do work with you and for you, as opposed to a tool that you need to go and use and then come back to your day job. That shift and that curation essentially does one fundamental thing for organizations. It moves the thinking from a tech stack to more a trust stack. If the end goal is to really build trust with the seller, what do I need to do, both systems and tools and processes, to be able to build trust? That's a fundamentally different way of thinking than just deploying tools so that I can collect data about what sellers are doing and metrics and all of that. We've just covered the 7 shifts that we see that contribute and that can contribute to a better future for enterprise B2B sales. And I'm going to go back to the very first question that we asked in the white paper. What does the future of enterprise B2B sales look like? My personal belief and my wish is that seller performance is at all-time high. Buyers and sellers engage like peers. And AI is the basis of your trust stack. Some of you may look at it and smile. It might be wishful thinking. But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing in my job and in Skwill if I wasn't a wishful thinker. I think there's an opportunity to reimagine the things that we want. We hope that our engagement and our contribution and all of you together, we can make this a reality. What does that actually mean for all of you if you had to go away from this webinar in terms of next steps? One, I think if you're a founder and a CEO, I think you've got to think about building defensible moats for you. And that's essentially a function of building trust with your customers, building high performance teams, and deciding when to deliver coaching for your team. Super critical. If you're a sales leader, you've got to start thinking about how can I curate a workflow or a seller journey around behavior and processes that enable building trust and seamless workflow. If you are a sales enablement leader, your goal could slowly morph into thinking about deploying tools that enable the seller to make judgments, as opposed to tools that provide features, enable and provision tools that allow seller judgment to triumph. You've got to believe in the fact that they know what they're doing, they own the customers. So allow them to make those choices by deploying tools that provide information that allow sellers to make that choice. And finally, if you are on the ground selling, you've got to start thinking about how to become more adaptable, how to improve your resilience, and how to incorporate technology in a way that makes you perform better. Volume is dead. Doesn't matter if you do 50 calls a day or 100 calls in a month. You've got to be able to engage, and you've got to be able to adapt on the fly as things change. So if you had to invest in learning something new, learn how to become more adaptable. After this webinar, what could you do? You'll get access to obviously the slide deck and also the hard copy of the Skwill report. You could take a stab at using the human agency framework to look at your sales cycle and see what tasks that you do or your team does. You could potentially look at technology. Think about how sellers can be matched to deal type and buyer type. You intuitively have a sense of what each of your sellers' strengths are. Think about where they may be better deployed than what's being done today. And finally, think about how you want to deliver coaching for your team. Try and see how we can incorporate more in the moment or ahead of the fact coaching interventions as opposed to after the fact. I think these are fairly easy to get started with. And obviously, if you have more questions, you can always get back to us if you need some help. In closing, my personal belief is that the future of B2B sales isn't seller versus AI. It's seller with AI. If not, the seller is going to be left behind. Thank you so much for your time. That's all I had in terms of an overview of where we think enterprise sales is heading. I think we've got a few minutes left, so I'm